Hello everybody, welcome to Astros Do Buckets. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already and drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second. It makes a massive difference on this video performs in the YouTube algorithm. It's hot takes, let's get into it. De'Aaron Fox is an MVP candidate and his performance on a night-to-night basis is not talked about enough, and Jacob should make a video about it. Well, maybe I'll make a second channel video about it at some point, but it's definitely not a main channel topic. But I will say, yes, De'Aaron Fox has been playing pretty freaking amazing. If I'm not mistaken, if he's not leading the league in scoring, he's definitely up there, at least in terms of pure points per game. I mean, yeah, an MVP candidate is definitely, I'd say, valid, just given his level of production. I'm not quite sure what Sacramento's standings are. Yeah, the Kings are currently the 6th seed, but, you know, it's a matter of, like, the 2 seed only has 10% more wins, 10% higher win percentage. So, you know, that's just kind of the way that the West is, I suppose. But yeah, I definitely can see that point of view for sure. I do think there's a chance he will be an MVP candidate, but I would imagine probably by the time the year's over, it's not quite really happening as a conversation anymore. James Harden and Mike D'Antoni had a greater impact on modern basketball than Stephen Curry. No, that's really stupid, actually, because people look at what wins championships, and that is the model that people go with from there. Even though, of course, you know, D'Antoni and the Rockets in 2018 went quite far, there's no one has changed basketball more than Stephen Curry. I think Stephen Curry owns the #1 place in terms of whose game has fundamentally changed basketball more. And James Harden and Mike D'Antoni didn't do it. People were not copying Mike D'Antoni earlier in his career when he was having pretty good success, but ultimately not championship success. People will doubt that shit until it finally works, and then it changes things. But until then, if what you're doing doesn't work, like if Mike D'Antoni and James Harden, all that happened, except they still didn't win championships and the Warriors didn't exist. They probably would have won championships if the Warriors didn't exist, but let's just say those coincide. Teams would not be shooting 3-pointers like they are now. I'll tell you that much. No one's changed the game more than Steph, and I think it's kind of ridiculous to suggest otherwise. Jaime Jaquez is already an elite role player for a team that is trying to contend, and it's really crazy that so many teams passed on him. Well, I don't know shit about the draft, so I have no idea how truly crazy it is for him to have been passed on, but I will say from pretty much the moment I saw him play, I was very intrigued because he has a more unique play style than I think a typical role player. He has a lot of old man game to him, post-ups, mid-range game, really good passing, and his 3-ball has gone in as of late after a rough start there. But yeah, overall, he has been fantastic. He's probably been, I don't know, maybe the 4th best rookie. It depends how you feel about Asar Thompson. But yeah, he's been phenomenal, and I think he more than makes up for some of their losses this offseason. I think he's quite good, and overall I feel very good about Miami this year. Jordan Poole will be out of the league once his contract ends. Well, there's a lot of time between now and then, unfortunately for the Washington Wizards, and I could see a world where that's true just because he's had enough time to prove that he's not worth being in the league, or the opposite can happen. I think Jordan Poole, the environment he was in Golden State, maybe in a smaller role but still something similar, is probably ultimately what was best for him. A lot of us sat here and talked about what it would look like if Jordan Poole was on his own team, and some of us were more positive than others, me being more positive than others. But turns out dude was actually in the perfect environment for him, not one that was restricting, but rather one that was correcting. I would not be surprised if Jordan Poole was not in the league after this contract. I wouldn't be surprised if he just got bought out and the Wizards just decided to eat that money for a couple of years. The Warriors need to trade Klay and Draymond if they want to extend their championship window for Steph. 3 of them on the same team will not be able to compete for a ring. Yeah, that's basically my opinion on the Warriors right now, is that Steph is still Steph, and if you can win a championship with Steph, which you can, you should pursue that. And right now, I do not think that Klay or Draymond, I feel like you could keep Draymond and that would be fine, but Klay especially is just a waste of a lot of money. He is about to expire, so you could just sit this one out. Maybe you can bring him in for cheap, but whatever it is, they need to do something to dramatically rechange this roster, see what they can do with Steph in a different context, because they're just kind of holding on to this big 3 because of the previous establishment. I think they're out of rings with these 3 is my ultimate point. The NBA should consider getting rid of defensive 3-second violations. It's one of the reasons why our players struggled in FIBA, and in the modern NBA, it doesn't make sense to constantly clog the paint because of how prominent the 3-point shot is. I don't think the NBA should adjust its rules just based on what happens in FIBA. I don't really care how that translates between basketball. I watched a little bit of FIBA, but I'm ultimately just an NBA guy, so I wouldn't want to change for that reason. And just because there's plenty of reason to clog the paint, even if with how prominent the three-pointer is, because if you can just have Rudy Gobert stand right under the rim 24/7, that just means no one's ever getting layups, okay? Teams would do that constantly, I promise you. Protecting the rim is still the biggest priority on defense, even if it's a little bit harder to just straight up protect the rim with how many perimeter options there are. That's still ultimately the main goal of a defense, is to protect the basket. The Grizzlies still have a strong possibility to be a play-in team after the terrible start to the season. I do agree that they can, but they do have a very big hole to dig themselves out of, and the prospect of getting that momentum on top of Ja Morant having to adjust and the team having to adjust, I do believe that it would ultimately be possible, but it's a very big uphill battle. And I don't know if I would bet on it happening for that reason, but possible for sure. The Western Conference is a motherfucker though, so I don't know, man. Tyrese Halliburton is already the best passer in the league. Yes, even better than Jokic. I guess. If we're talking about passer, or are we talking about playmaker? Because I think playmaking and passing are two different things. Passing is just literally how good you are at putting a pass like right where it needs to be. And from that perspective, I think Tyrese Halliburton is probably the best in the league at just making a 100% accurate pass. But in terms of like creating plays for his teammates, I do believe that Jokic does a better job of that. The system in Indiana is really predicated on Halliburton's playmaking, but it's not as much like, I don't even know how to fully describe this. It's just Tyrese is not creating advantages as much as Nikola Jokic is. And part of that is the scoring aspect of the game, but I don't view them as separate things. I think scoring and playmaking are directly intertwined. So Jokic is still the best playmaker in the NBA. If you want to see say Halliburton's a better passer, I guess. He definitely has a better assist to turnover ratio for that, point of view, but Jokic is the best playmaker in the NBA, and I don't think anyone is touching that. Reggie Jackson is better than Cade Cunningham. Now that is freaking funny. Definitely not. Cade Cunningham has literally the worst job in the entire NBA right now in terms of making him look good. In the right context, I think Cade Cunningham could be an all-star caliber player, like if not right now, definitely next season, but he is playing 90s basketball with the Detroit Pistons right now, and that doesn't really translate in the modern NBA. The spacing's terrible. He's constantly forced to take shots over two defenders, constantly getting turnovers because all the passing lanes are clogged because no one, is hitting a three or no one's in the right spot. There's so many players who have no idea where to be, so many players who have no idea how to work off of his playmaking ability. Cade Cunningham is in a shitty position right now, and Reggie Jackson is not better than him, as funny as that suggestion is. The Chicago Bulls will keep their core for the rest of the season. They'll go on a winning streak in the new year and make the playoffs and have a 2023 Miami. No. No.